It is a Tuesday evening and you have finally finished work. You are tired, you have eaten dinner, and you just want to relax. You open Netflix or your streaming service of choice, intending to watch a movie. You scroll through the trending now list. Then you check the comedy section. You watch a trailer. You look up the Rotten Tomatoes score on your phone. You think about watching that classic film you promised yourself you would see, but then you worry it might be too heavy for a weeknight. You go back to the comedies. 45 minutes pass. You are now too exhausted to watch anything, so you close the laptop and go to bed. This scenario is one of the most common shared experiences of modern life. It sounds funny, but it points to a source of genuine exhaustion. We live in an era of unprecedented abundance. We have access to virtually every song ever recorded, every book ever written, and thousands of potential romantic partners within a 5-mile radius. Logic suggests that more choice should equal more freedom and happiness. But in practice, this abundance often leads to anxiety, paralysis, and a lingering sense of dissatisfaction. This is the paradox of choice. You are not unable to pick a movie because you are lazy or indecisive by nature. You are stuck because you are suffering from a psychological phenomenon known as FOBO, the fear of better options. This is the persistent, anxious feeling that no matter what you choose, there is something slightly better just around the corner that you are missing out on. It is the inability to commit to a decision because the possibility of optimization feels endless. We need to understand why our brains short-circuit in the face of abundance and how we can learn to simply choose. At the heart of this struggle is a distinction made by psychologists between two types of decision-making styles: maximizing and satisficing. A maximizer is someone who seeks the absolute best result. To make a decision, they feel compelled to examine every single option to ensure they are not making a suboptimal choice. They need to know they have turned over every stone. A satisficer, on the other hand, has a set of criteria for what they need. As soon as they find an option that meets those standards, they take it. They do not worry about whether a slightly better version exists 3 rows down. The problem is that in the modern world, maximizing is mathematically impossible. You cannot review every restaurant in the city. You cannot date every single person in your age group. Yet the maximizer's brain operates on the illusion that there is a perfect choice hidden somewhere in the data, and that finding it will guarantee happiness. This creates a trap. When you finally do make a choice, you are often less happy than the satisficer. Why? Because you are exhausted from the search, and you are plagued by the what-ifs of all the options you rejected. This dynamic shows up in painful patterns throughout our adult lives, often in areas far more significant than picking a movie. One of the most pervasive patterns is found in modern dating. The rise of dating apps has commodified connection, creating a sense of an infinite catalog of people. A person suffering from FOBO might keep the apps installed even while seeing someone they really like, just in case. They might hesitate to label a relationship or delete their profile because they are haunted by the hypothetical idea that a better match might appear tomorrow. This prevents true intimacy. When you are constantly scanning the horizon for a better option, you are never fully present with the person in front of you. You treat the relationship as a placeholder rather than a commitment. The irony is that by keeping one foot out the door to protect yourself from settling, you ensure that the relationship never deepens enough to become the great connection you are looking for. You are withholding the very investment that makes a relationship fulfilling. Another common pattern is the paralysis of minor consumption, such as dining out or buying a household item. You might find yourself reading 50 reviews for a toaster or analyzing the menu of a restaurant online for days before a dinner date. You are terrified of the feeling of regret, the feeling that you might order the chicken and then see the pasta at the next table and realize you made a mistake. This turns low-stakes decisions into high-stakes research projects. It drains your mental battery, leaving you with less willpower for the things that actually matter, like your work or your health. We also see this in social dynamics, specifically in the inability to commit to plans. We have all had the friend, or been the friend, who says maybe to an invitation. They give a soft commitment, saying, "I'll let you know." Often this is FOBO in action. They are waiting to see if a better, more exciting social offer comes along. They want to keep their Friday night optimized. The result is a fractured social life, where friends feel undervalued and the person themselves ends up feeling anxious and unanchored, never fully belonging anywhere because they are always waiting for the next best thing. So how do we break this loop? We cannot simply care less, but we can implement practical strategies to limit the scope of our maximizing. The first tool is to adopt the good enough standard, or what some call the 70% rule. When you are facing a decision, ask yourself what your requirements are. Once you find an option that meets about 70% of your ideal criteria, or is simply good enough to solve the problem, you choose it immediately. You have to intellectually accept that the perfect 100% option is a unicorn. It likely does not exist, and the time you would spend trying to find it costs more than the difference in value. If a movie looks 70% interesting, watch it. If a hotel looks 70% nice and is in your budget, book it. You were trading the illusion of perfection for the reality of time. You were buying back your own life from the clutches of optimization. The second tool is to intentionally limit your options. Our brains are not designed to process 30 variables at once. We handle 3 or 4 options much better. When you are overwhelmed, you must become your own curator. If you are buying a pair of headphones and there are 50 tabs open, arbitrarily close 47 of them. Pick 3 based on a quick glance, and then force yourself to choose only from those 3. By artificially restricting the pool of choice, you lower the cognitive load. You might worry that you deleted the best option. That is possible, but it is far more likely that you deleted 45 options that were effectively identical, and you saved yourself 3 hours of stress. The relief of having a manageable decision space is almost always worth the risk of missing a marginally better product. The third tool utilizes a quirk of human psychology regarding irreversible decisions. Research suggests that we are actually happier with decisions when we cannot change them. When a decision is final, our psychological immune system kicks in. We rationalize why we made the right choice, and we look for the positives. When a decision is reversible, like when we buy something with a generous return policy or keep a dating profile active, we continue to deliberate. We keep looking for flaws. You can hack this by making your decisions mentally irreversible. When you pick a restaurant, close the browser and tell yourself, "This is where we are going, and it will be great." Do not look at reviews after the fact. When you choose a movie, put the phone away. Commit to the experience. Tell yourself that the door is closed. By removing the escape hatch, you force your brain to engage with the reality of the choice rather than the fantasy of the alternative. There is a myth that the people who spend the most time researching and agonizing over decisions are the smartest or most responsible people. We think that thoroughness is a virtue, but there is a point of diminishing returns where thoroughness becomes dysfunction. There is a difference between doing due diligence on a mortgage and doing due diligence on a toothbrush. The smartest decision is not always the one with the highest specs. It is often the one that was made efficiently, allowing you to move on with your day. Consider the experience of buying a gift. The maximizer might spend weeks looking for the perfect gift, stressing out, and eventually buying something expensive but feeling unsure. The satisficer might walk into a store, see something that reminds them of their friend, and buy it immediately. The satisficer is likely to feel joy in the giving, while the maximizer is still wondering if they should have bought the other item. The energy you bring to the choice often matters more than the object itself. Ultimately, the takeaway is about redefining where happiness comes from. We are culturally conditioned to believe that happiness comes from the object of our choice, the perfect partner, the perfect job, the perfect vacation spot. If we are unhappy, we assume we chose the wrong object. But psychological evidence suggests that happiness comes from the commitment to the choice. The grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. A movie becomes a favorite not because it has a perfect score, but because you watched it with full attention. A partner becomes the love of your life, not because they were the #1 ranked human in the city, but because you built a history with them. FOBO keeps you hovering above your life, afraid to land. But life only happens when you touch the ground. As you go through your week, notice when you are hesitating. Notice when you are trying to optimize something that does not need to be optimized. Ask yourself, Am I looking for the perfect option, or am I just afraid of making a choice? Give yourself permission to choose the good enough path and see if the freedom of deciding brings you more joy than the burden of searching ever did.